Another message for President Bush. 31% of the Republican voters in South Dakota delivered it yesterday when they cast their ballots for Uncommitted. Pat Buchanan, who was not on the ballot in South Dakota, said the message he hears is that George Bush is weak as a kitten. The president's interpretation reported tonight by ABC's Britt Hume, who's in San Antonio, Texas.
Good to see all of you.
The president plunged into a crowd of friendly servicemen at the military base where he landed in Texas today, but he couldn't avoid shouted questions from reporters about yesterday's surprising result in South Dakota.
It's a good win, Chip. 69%.
Moments later, he had an even grander description.
Big victory.
But big victory was not the way his aides were describing it. They said it was another protest vote and admitted they hadn't expected it. Vice President Quayle, campaigning in Georgia, said much the same thing.
I think the message in South Dakota is pretty much along the lines of the message in New Hampshire, and that is that the people are fed up with Washington. They're fed up with high taxes. They're fed up with too much regulation. They're fed up with a bad economy.
The president's Republican challenger, campaigning in Louisiana today, was citing the South Dakota results as great news for him.
Well, I think the returns from South Dakota show that George Bush as a candidate is really weak as a kitten. If he hadn't kept us off the ballot there, I think we could have cleaned his clock in South Dakota.
Nobody in the Bush camp is taking that kind of talk seriously, but nobody's denying that the president has endured a series of embarrassments, including this episode last night in Los Angeles. The president went to call on Ronald Reagan on a day the former president had been quoted as saying Mr. Bush, quote, didn't seem to stand for anything. Instead of having the usual photo opportunity, which would have implied Mr. Reagan's full blessing, the press was kept outside the gates of the Reagan home. Mr. Reagan issued a written statement today denying that harmful quote and saying he fully supports the president. That might have helped undo the damage, but what the Bush campaign needs now is a little less damage in the first place. Britt Hume, ABC News, San Antonio.
On the Democratic side, with South Dakota safely tucked away in Senator Bob Kerry's hip pocket, most of the candidates were campaigning in the South today. It looks like Senator Kerry has now decided that Governor Clinton may be vulnerable on his behavior during the Vietnam War. Here's ABC's Jim Wooten.
In Atlanta today, Senator Kerry, who said very little about it before, directly attacked Governor Clinton as unelectable in November because of his efforts to avoid the Vietnam draft.
Yes, the problems that he had with the draft, the nature in which he avoided having to put himself at the mercy of the draft. It will be a major issue, in my judgment, in November of 1992.
Just a week before the Georgia primary, where Clinton fully expects his first victory, Kerry said Republicans would attack Clinton this fall as they did Governor Dukakis 4 years ago.
I think he's going to get opened up, like a soft peanut in November of 1992.
Kerry was trying to exploit a potential Clinton weakness suggested by South Dakota voters yesterday. In exit polls, nearly a quarter of the Democrats there said the draft charges made them less likely to vote for Clinton. Nearly a third said they were uncertain of his honesty and integrity. Senator Tsongas, also in Atlanta today, also had some disappointing news from the South Dakota exit polls. About a quarter of the Democrats voiced serious concern about his health. Senator Harkin, who has won only in his home state caucuses, was in Maryland reciting the score as he sees it so far. One for him, one for Kerry, and one for Tsongas.
And where's that fellow from Arkansas?
The fellow from Arkansas is trying to decide where to focus between now and next Tuesday. Maryland doesn't look inviting, and neither does Colorado. Polls show Tsongas leading in both. Governor Brown is already in Colorado trying to capitalize on his success in Maine. Facing the crush of time and the crunch of money, all the Democrats are scrambling now, looking for just the right time on the calendar and the right place on the map to make some progress, anywhere. Jim Wooten, ABC News, Washington.
Back to President Bush.